Testing.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the workforce panel. Class. Good morning.
And Mr. Woolsey, may I introduce you and then let you take the stage?
Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Johnson, the Communications Manager here for the Acquisition Research Program. Just as a short introduction, we welcome Mr. James Woolsey as President of Defense Acquisition University, a role he's had since 2014, and a frequent attendee and a participant of the symposium. We also want to call out that about a year and a half ago, August of 2022, DAU and Naval Postgraduate School signed a memorandum of agreement integrating better DAU courses into the NPS curriculum. And that's been a really great change in the way that we educate our students, and they get extra access to the DAU training, and the DAU coursework gets new students, right, and diversity into their programs. So we appreciate that. And there's more information about that to be found on our website if you want to see how that's working for any of our current students in attendance or other people interested in that collaboration. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Woolsey, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. Showing real discernment, in my view, to come to the workforce panel. Not at all self-serving, but none of the other things we're talking about today can happen without the workforce being trained, being ready to do the work they need to do, and doing that in a challenging environment, to say the least. And certainly not in my career have things been changing as fast as they are today. So it's my pleasure to host this panel. I have some great people with me, both in person and virtually. We're going to get a little tricky and see if we can do both today. Next slide, please. Pretty straightforward agenda. I'm going to talk some, they're going to talk some about what we're all doing to help the workforce succeed. And then we'd like to get questions from you, as well as some that we thought might be interesting to ask as we go forward. I'd first like to introduce the people that I have with me, all experienced in this area, and actually importantly also experienced in other areas of acquisition. They've done the thing before coming to help other people build their careers, and I think that's really important. Otis Lincoln is the Fourth Estate DACM. Fourth Estate, as most of you know, means the defense agencies, the things that are not Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and Marines, a big portfolio of different kinds of organizations that Otis has to help build their careers and succeed in this challenging environment. He is joining us virtually, and let's do a sound check. Otis, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good morning. I am
Excellent.
here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we sure can. Good to hear you. Even better to hear you than usual. And Marianne Lyons is the datum for the Navy, doing a similar function for the very large and very diverse workforce of the Department of the Navy. As you can see, she's been a deputy program manager, among other things, to prepare her for this position. And here in 3 dimensions and in person, we have Rob Richardson from the Army, who serves that similar function for the Department of the Army. And as you can see, he's been both in the industry and civilian side of the acquisition game, so also comes to it with good knowledge. And the newest member of the group is Ruben Rios, filling the large shoes of Sammy Slade, as many of you known for many years, being the DACM for the Department of the Air Force and Space Force. He's going to explain a little bit about the unusual arrangement that they have there. So with that, I will get into my quick section of what DAU is doing to help the workforce succeed in this difficult environment. The big change, which many of you are familiar with, is that we realized that top-down training direction was no longer appropriate to meet the needs of the workforce today, that we can't have an idea in our head that headquarters, either at the OSD level or in the services, can tell everyone what they need to know in order to succeed in their jobs. Things are changing too fast. There are too many different kinds of people doing too many different kinds of jobs. So we changed that model and are in the process of changing that model. It's really a 3-step process. Step 1 was to break that structure. And we did that with the Back to Basics initiative that many of you are familiar with, changing one from, we're going to tell you everything you need to do that, and you'll be certified, to one that says, there are some basic things we know you need to know, And then after that, you own your training. You're going to have to develop your own career to meet your needs. Big change. Step one, the structure has been changed. And it has been in place now, and people are being certified in the new structure. Step two is that DAU particularly has to build a user centric and content rich platform so that when people learn what they need to learn, figure out what they need to learn, that we can provide that for them and that it can be easy to find. We're not done with that, but that is a ongoing process that's really critical. We've made a lot of progress. I'm really pleased with what we've done so far. More yet to do. And then number three is where I'm actually asking for your help. We have to, all of us, build a mindset, a culture of lifelong learning. And the Department of Defense, largely in the civilians and military, especially civilians, don't have that mindset today the way they need to have it to thrive in today's environment. I'm sure all of you either are or will be or have been supervisors, and supervisors particularly are going to have to be very active in helping the people in their organizations, in their groups, figure out what they need to learn, help them learn, give them incentives, and also model those incentives. Bad news, you need to learn too, and so do I. We all need to be learning every day the way the environment's changing. So it's an all skate. Everyone needs to participate if people are going to be able to learn all they need to learn. Some details about how we change the structure. I'm using a metaphor here about flight training, in this case in the Department of the Navy, the Marine Corps. The young woman on the bottom left is the daughter of my sidekick and partner in all things at DAU, Frank Kelly. He has 4 Marines, and one of those Marines recently finished flight training at Pensacola. The old way we did training, her name is Catherine. The old way we did training was if we told Catherine at primary flight training that she was going to learn about all those platforms on the right. The way we taught contracting is everyone had to learn everything, and they did it in the first couple of years. That makes no sense. She wouldn't learn enough about those platforms, and she wouldn't learn the platform she needed. She learned them all. Then we shrunk it down to more like primary flight training. Contracting officers learn all the things contracting officers all need to know. But we haven't made enough progress on step 2 yet. You still need to learn how to fly that particular platform or do services contracting, large platform contracting. And this is where supervisors and organizations need to help their people develop their careers and decide where they want to go, either what they're doing now or what they want to do next, and help guide them to do the training, the experiences and the learning they need to do to go forward so that they're fully combat capable, if you will, in platforms, in abilities, in contracting, program management, and all the other career fields for what they are doing. They can then get in the depth of what they're doing and not just touch on all the subjects. And then there's everything else. None of us can sit still anymore the way the world is changing. And we also can't expect headquarters to tell us what we need to learn. Everyone's talking about AI a lot. I will talk about it also. I'm stunned by how fast we went from, oh, isn't that cute, to, wow, that could do something useful, to, I use it every day. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a use case where I did something in 15 minutes that would have taken several hours, spread over several days, and included several other people. And AI was that efficient for me, the generative AI I'm talking about here. Multiply that through the entire workforce and realize how fast things are changing and how much change is coming. And it isn't just AI, it's all these other subjects have the qualities of changing fast, and what people need to know is different depending on who they are and what they're doing. So we are building an environment where people can find what they need rather than being told what they need to learn. Part of that platform is there are lots of different ways to learn at DAU now. It's no longer in a classroom or flipping slides in online learning. We now have instructor-led classes that I've always had. We have webinars have exploded. We're on a pace to have 160,000 people come to DAU webinars this year. Really from almost nothing to a very popular way to reach people. Credentials are the way that Catherine, so to speak, could get qualified in particular platforms or in contracting and program management, learn particular things. We have a lot of web assets like the Adaptive Action Framework on the left. We are about to do our annual TEDx event next week or next month, another way to reach people that we didn't have before. We have lots of workshops, and we also have AI on our environment now. We now have an assistant on the dau.edu website that can help you find the things you need to do in a natural, engaging way. So we have a lot of different ways to help people, but we all still need to help the people who are working with us find where they need to go as they move forward. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Otis Lincoln, who is the Fourth Estate DACM. Otis.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Woolsey. First and foremost, I appreciate everybody taking the time out. Thank you, MPS, for allowing me to come back and sit on this panel. I enjoyed it last year. My apologies, I wasn't able to be there with you all this year in person, but our office is actually holding a symposium as well this same week. But I always like to take a little time out. Can you jump to the next slide for me, please? Just wanted to take a few moments to just talk about what the Fourth Estate does. Mr. Woolsey did mention to the fact that, basically we all support all of the DoD and field activities that extend beyond the military departments, such as my colleagues and what they'll be doing. So my office, we're responsible for helping to train and develop over 31 different agencies. So that's roughly about 30,000 acquisition workforce members that fall within that multiple realm of agencies, as well as the intelligence community. So the principles of our position is, one, we just really look at how we just act as an advisory to being able to support the agencies. We work with DWIA reps that are located throughout all of the agencies. We work with their component acquisition executives, just to kind of work with them and help them to say, okay, how can we support you? How can we help augment training? How can we be able to help with skill gaps within your workforce? So we kind of work with those agencies and be able to offer additional tools that they can use and apply into their toolkits for the workforce to be able to do their jobs more efficiently and effectively. That's one part of what we do. The second part, we actually do all of the data management and gathering for all of our acquisition workforce members through our own in-house system, which is our DADM systems, which means where when individuals want to apply for training, when they submit their requests for certifications, when they want to apply for continuous learning points, if they want to be able to review what they've taken, kind of like an acquisition career brief, they can go online and actually review that information and download that for their own record keeping. So we actually manage all of that data in-house. And then thirdly, we're also a good steward of the DARTA account, where we do receive funds from HCI, which is also co-located with DAU. We use those funds to actually offer a variety of other training and symposiums and conferences and speaking sessions that we actually have to help further advance how we train and teach the acquisition workforce. Next slide. So just wanted to give a quick snapshot of what the Fourth Estate kind of looks like. So as you can see here are all of the now functional areas that represent the Fourth Estate. Our biggest category are contracting, LCL, and ETM. So out of those three, that's where our largest kind of footprints sit. But as you can see, we're well represented throughout all of the functional areas. We have 31 different agencies. Our biggest one is probably going to be DISA, DLA, MDA. Those are some of the bigger ones that can have anywhere upwards to about 9,000 acquisition workforce members. So we actually help them manage not only just their DWIA training and certification, but augmented training as well for their acquisition workforce. Next slide. So there's actually one other thing I wanted to kind of mention just beforehand is Mr. Woolsey did bring up one good point when it comes to self-directed learning. So as you all know, the main priority is always going to be DWIA certification and training. But one of the things that our office is targeted to do, and we work a lot with DAU in regards to that, is promotion of some of the other ways that our workforce is learning. And mainly because of the fact that we look at how, since COVID, it showed how everyone is learning differently. What do we do? How can we make sure we stay engaged and target to our workforce members and kind of give them that training that's needed on the side? So a lot of the things that we do are kind of like our leadership and talent management portfolio, which is augmented training, soft skills training, or some of the big things, heavy hitters right now is like AI. We offer a lot of training for our workforce members to be able to go out and actually have that kind of training, hands-on experience, and then be able to take that right back to their office and apply for that. We do brown bags, we do speaker series. So we have great relationships within the agencies as well as, and that's not only in the DoD space, but also in the federal space as well, in academia. So we actually work with other individuals, have them come in and speak to our workforce. We get a lot of attendance, anywhere between about 400, 800 attendees to sit into those actual speaker series that we have at least once every quarter. One of our big events, which we're having this week, is our Leaders Building Leader Symposium. We have about 1,200, 1,300 registrants there. So that's actively going on as we speak right now. So we try to do a lot of things to just help move that needle beyond just, hey, let me get my DWIA certification to be able to have the necessary training and skill sets that I need that you can not only apply today, but you'll be able to use later on down the line in your career. So that's all I have. Just want to jump off the stage. And again, thank you, everybody. Can't wait to hear questions.
Thank you, Otis, and thanks for joining us. He is putting on an excellent program, the building leaders that he referred to before. Also not required for people. It's an opportunity for them that's very popular and very well received. So thank you, Otis, for that and for your talk. And we will now move to Marianne Lyons. I haven't checked to see whether we can hear Marianne yet. Marianne, are you online?
I am online. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Good to see you and hear
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. Yes, again, thank you for hosting this the DACM panel. I wish that I could be there in person, but I am enabling my son to be a lifelong learner by graduating from college tomorrow. So, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be there in person. I do want to give a shout out to my deputy out there in the audience somewhere, Renee King. She is my right-hand person in the DATM office.
She's waving back at
you. Okay, good. So for the Navy, and I also represent the Marine Corps, so I don't want to forget about them. Sometimes we say Navy, but it's really the Navy and the Marine Corps in terms of the development and training of the acquisition workforce writ large. Otis was a good person to lead from because I'm going to say everything that he said, I do the same, just in a different, we're organized differently, but we all do more than just make sure that you get your certification done. So I'm going to walk through a couple of discussion topics today. One of the themes of this panel is to discuss how we are enabling lifelong learning. So I have a couple of discussion topics in that regard, but I didn't want to dwell on all the things that we do, to also leave interest for time for questions. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the makeup of the Department of Navy acquisition workforce, civilian and military. We have basically been holding steady for the last year, coming out of the back to basics changes and realignment to support the new DWIA framework. I do want to note that we are majority ETM now. Some of the career fields that were eliminated, IT, facilities, engineering, and PQM, some aligned under ETM, and some were determined to not be required to be DWIA certified. But this is how we kind of had a large percentage for engineering before we moved into back to basics, but now we have a larger percentage of ETM. The other thing to point out on the right is how we are aligned from what we're calling tiers. We're not levels anymore, we're tiers. And each functional area has different, for contracting, we have one tier, for example, and then you might have two tiers, and then also advanced certification requirements. So over on the right is the breakdown of how we're aligned by tier and also by functional area. And we are still in the bottom there, you have an unknown black. That is relation to, we're still working through the legacy career field, what I call cleanup. We've been progressively working that down, down to about 600 positions that need to be either decoded or changed to a functional area. So we have a challenge in the Department of Navy because we're very decentralized. So it does take a lot of communication and follow-up to ensure that old PDs and PRDs are being updated to the new back to basics and aren't just sort of reached out and continuing to make those errors. So I work closely with the HR side of the Department of Navy to expedite that. Okay, next slide, please. So for Department of Navy, we have a business system called eDACM, and that's a centralized hub for all of our guidance and documentation, and also the gateway to apply and seek certification. We have been working hard over the last year to improve user experience. We're providing a lot of tools to the acquisition workforce community to provide dashboards and ability to deep dive on different aspects of acquisition workforce health metrics. And over on the right is just a visual of an example that we have for program management. We are using also eDACM to provide announcements for our various nominated programs, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those in later slides. And that's to focus a little bit on the talent management side, just as a means to further promulgate our communication. We aren't just using eDACM, we are trying to use other tools such as LinkedIn and Teams for Department of Navy is very big. So creating different forums and Teams channels in order to further promulgate the information on some of our programs. We do support tuition assistance, and so eDACM is another way that the workforce can come in and seek tuition assistance for the civilian workforce. And then we provide, again, guidance documents, latest policy memos and things of that sort in eDACM as well. And we are working closely with DAU as they move to provide more direct registration and to make it easier for the workforce to sign up quickly for class. And so we're working on a pilot with DAU to do that. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the aspects that the Department of Navy is really focused on is the industry, understanding industry as a means to ensure that we, it's not only about building our major defense articles, it's also negotiating contracts, it's understanding when you're working with your industry partner and you're trying to figure out how to, you set up a contract, and is it more about profit, more about cash in terms of what they're looking at to incentivize. So we have a couple of our nominative programs. One is focused on mid-level GS 13, 14 types of workforce, 04s and 05s for the military. That's the 3 IMC class at Darden. We also work with the OSD on the Secretary of Defense Executive Fellows Program, which is for the military, supporting industry rotations. And then complementing that is on the right, there is the public-private talent exchange, also with industry, where we support the civilian rotations for about 6 months typically. And in the middle in the red, that's the more of the senior level course. That's the government industry relations relationships, and that's hosted by UNC. And it's very, it's more of a curated program with government VIPs, and we kind of curate it based on different areas that we want to focus on for that training course, and we offer that 2 times a year. And then the Eisenhower School is another way that we have nominated programs that we really take advantage of this superior acquisition course for the workforce community and leverage the allocations that we receive. Okay. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things that we have been working on over the last year is leveraging our national leads. So each functional area is led by 2 senior executives, and they meet with their community of practice, and they have meetings throughout the year. And they're all either have published career guides or they're close to publishing career guides. And the importance of the career guides is to not only, we've got the we're clear in terms of the DWIA certification requirement, but now we have to talk about all the things that Mr. Woolsey was discussing, credentials at DAU, podcast, the variety of training opportunities that are out there, but not just DAU. We also have other Department of Navy specific training classes and experiential learning opportunities. And so the national leads look at it from the perspective of their community of practice and put that into a career guide to help guide and focus their acquisition workforce members. I think, one of the challenges is there's so much out there for a employee to try and figure out where can we start. A guide is a first step, but then also creating playlists and things so when you move into these different learning management systems, you can kind of figure out where to focus instead of just seeing, 1,000 different training opportunities and trying to figure out where to start. So this is something that the Navy's been working on over the last year. And that's next slide, please. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mary Ann.
Stand by for questions.
Before we move on to Rob, I want to just highlight a couple of things that Mary Ann talked about. First, the most important, congratulations on your daughter graduating from college. My son graduated last week. Big event for all of us.
Yeah.
Less important. 53,000 members of the Department of Navy acquisition workforce. That's a lot to manage, and a big group that's in a lot of different places doing a lot of different things. I want to highlight direct enrollment that Mary Ann talked about. The translation for that is we're trying to take steps and time out of the process between when a person notices they need to do something and the time they can actually do the learning, get the class, or whatever it is. If we want people to learn when they aren't required to do it, we have to make it easy. And I think that's a great way to help do that. And then in the functional area career guides, great initiative from the Department of the Navy. What's happened is in old world, people like to complain. You tell me everything I have to do. You're giving me too much instruction. It's too rigid. Okay, congratulations, you caught the bus. Now there's all this stuff out there. There's so many opportunities. It looks like chaos for people, and anything we can do, and it's a big we, the career guides are great to help them make sense of all the opportunities that are out there is really powerful. At DAU, we're trying to work playlists. Mary Ann referred to that. All the things we can do to help make it easier. The chat bot on the website and the career guides are another great step of that. So thank you for that presentation, and let's move to the Department of the Army. Rob.
Well, thank you, Jim. And good morning, everyone. Rob Richardson. I'm the Director of the Army Acquisition Support Center and the Director of Acquisition Career Management. But before I begin, I think I want to compliment Otis on that beard. It's been a while since I've seen him. That's impressive.
It gets better every
Nice
time
work,
we see him,
buddy.
doesn't it?
I like it. So, and there he comes. There he goes.
It is
Which way
epic,
do we
really.
go? It's really filled in. Yeah. Good work. So this is going to look a lot like my counterparts. No real surprise. We all have a very similar job to do. We all have a very similar workforce. Percentages, numbers, look pretty consistent across all of the activities. So today's Army acquisition workforce consists of over 33,000 acquisition professionals spread out over more than 15 major commands. It was an epiphany for me when I took over the job a couple of years ago that most of those acquisition professionals are not in the ASC PEO footprint, the folks that are actually developing, acquiring, and fielding material, which is where I grew up, which is clearly the center of the acquisition universe, right? But obviously not, because 2/3 of our acquisition workforce in the Army is outside of that august group. So as you can see, Army Materiel Command is a major component. That's Army Contracting Command. So the vast majority of the contracting professionals are within that footprint, as are all of the life cycle logisticians. Those are our life cycle management commands. 30% in the relatively new Army Future Command. And that's where the majority of our R&D facilities, our laboratories, the combat development centers are. And then others, as you see there, It was a surprise to me that I provide program managers to places like the Missile Defense Agency and Space and Missile Command and others kind of outside of the Army footprint. But we have folks in a lot of places. 95% of those professionals are civilian. 5% are military, and we're not unique, but we do have a fair number of NCOs in that footprint that fill out our contracting battalions and do much of the contingency contracting for us. As you can see on the right-hand side, the majority of the workforce is in that engineering technical management function, as Mary Ann alluded to when we fell under back to basics about 2.5 years ago. Now, when we recoded, that swept up a lot of prior acquisition career fields under that group. Contracting is the second largest. And just like the Fourth Estate, I think 80% of Otis's or thereabouts was in those kind of first three. Likewise for us, we have a very experienced workforce, average of 14 years experience. They're highly educated, with almost 50% having a master's degree or above, 90% with bachelor's degree. We're not really at the cliff of retirement, but we do have a fair number of folks that are retirement eligible or becoming retirement eligible in the near future. And gender-wise, we have some things to work on. So we're about 70% male. If you look at the ETM being the preponderance of the workforce, that probably makes sense, puts it into context. We actually have a lot of, one of the many levers that I control is in our recruiting and recruitment. So we really are targeting the women in STEM, going to SWE, for instance, and places like that to try and recruit and hire on the spot. So we are actively engaged in kind of improving our diversity across the footprint. That was actually a direct challenge that Mr. Bush, our acquisition executive, laid down to me when he came on board 3 years ago. Is we need to do better. So I hired 2 months ago now, I guess, the first for the Army anyway, civil rights data analyst. So I have a card-carrying EEO person that also is an ORSA. So she's actively mining. We have more data than we know what to do with now, and she's working on metrics for me. But we're starting to really be able to see ourselves and help focus those efforts, and maybe more importantly, have metrics to look at how we're doing over time. So a lot of exciting things going on with respect to the workforce and what we look like. So we're now into the actualization, optimization, whatever you want to call it, of back to basics. The recoding people and moving folks from the career fields into the functional areas was the easy part. Now we have a significant heavy lift in change management.
Pardon me, we had to rebuild the entire curriculum. So easy. No, not so much.
It's just repackaged, right? So I have a road show now going out to all the organizations, really trying to foot stomp this importance now. So the direct supervisor link to the employee and that individual development plan is critically important to us now as we continue to optimize and build this out. We're building a lot of job aids, decision support tools for both the employees and the supervisors. I think we've done ourselves a little bit of a disservice by calling the credentials and the other training that's available beyond the certification piece elective learning, because that kind of sounds like it's optional. It really isn't. So we're really trying to acculturate all the folks into this environment or this new world of continuous developmental training and what's next, what next. So, and it's hard work, right? Change management is always a difficult proposition. I still have supervisors lamenting about the good old days when all they had to do was, tell their employee, go do your level 2 training. Now they have to sit down with them, talk to them, help them plan out their career. What's next? What tools do you need? Where do we need to send you for credentials? So it's kind of changed the face, and people are actually earning their supervisory differential now, having to do that career development at the deck plates where the rubber really meets the road in that interaction. We've made a lot of enhancements to the IDP functionality within inside our acquisition management portal. So Mary Ann talked to her functional leads in the Army. We also have acquisition functional leads in the Army. Essentially, there are our assistant secretaries at ASALT. Each of them has published guidance outlining their priorities for their piece of the workforce and what they want to see folks doing in terms of continuous learning and credentials and all those. We've auto-populated that in the IDP module. So when the supervisors do the IDP development with their employees, those are hot linked in there, so the employee can just go in and click and be registered and move out on that training. The problem is helping people find the time to do that, and I think we talk about that later in the panel. And then with those functional leaders, really leveraging them, writing them hard. Each of them has a functional area page where they outline their vision as they have updates, new initiatives, things that they want to do within their sector of the workforce. That's communicated real time to the workforce, and they're able to get out there and get the latest information that we have for them in their area. And then just some current initiatives within the Army. Last year was really our first year of digital transformation. We had a new principal deputy, Mr. Bang. So we began the upskilling or this upskilling journey for the Army acquisition workforce. We mandated some very specific coursework, at least for the DRU, for the PEO staff, was compulsory to complete this initial tranche of training, which was really oriented on establishing functional literacy across all things digital. So if a contract specialist is sitting in an IPT and folks are talking about DevSecOps and the velocity of that agile development team and all the things that folks like to throw around so nobody knows what they're talking about, they could at least be conversant, right, and understand where folks were going. Next phase now is that detailed knowledge within your functional area. So now, okay, great. We've gone agile. We're doing all this agile development. How do I contract for it? What does that CLIN structure look like? How am I basing my payments? How am I doing that? If I'm a PM now, instead of having 1 or 2 increments, I may have 30 capability drops, right? So how do I build that acquisition strategy? How do I build my P&R forms to even pay for this, the way that we're going to do this now? So we're starting to do that. So more in 24 really is that second phase for us of the digital upskilling to really focus now that you have fundamental literacy. You speak that area, now you need to really learn how within your functional area, you're going to function going forward and what that really means for you. Along with that, we have an agreement with Carnegie Mellon University. We have this data-driven leadership course that they teach for us on the campus in Pittsburgh. So far, we've run, I want to say about 400 folks through that training. We introduced a 2-day executive course this year. We had a lot of senior leaders that wanted to take it but couldn't commit to the 5 days. So we built a 2-day for them, and that's actually garnered interest even outside of the acquisition community. I just had an email discussion with one of our core commanders about 3 weeks ago that wants to go to the executive course this summer, and his folks are telling him that this needs to be part of the training for our combat formation commanders when they're selected for battalion and brigade command, that they need to have that basis and digital and understanding how to use big data to make decisions. So we'll continue to grow that. And then certification compliance is another big focus for us this year. So with Back to Basics, we introduced a new grace period. So the areas that are professional or foundational certification have a 3-year grace period, and we're into year 3. And we have folks that still need to complete their training, complete their experiential requirements, and actually put in for the certification. So we're starting to track our folks that are in that window are getting automated email messages from our career acquisition management portal that says, hey, you know, you need to register for this class. Oh, by the way, if you're contracting and you require the contracting exam, you know, you have to sign up for that. There may be competition for resources. You know, you can't be sure that in the last day of your grace period, you're going to actually be able to do that. So major focus, and we'll continue to flesh that out so that our supervisors, our functional leads, and our center directors all have access to that to see where exactly their workforce is. And I believe that concludes my portion of the discussion. On to
Thank
the
you, Rob.
workforce.
Couple things I'd like to pick on yours and emphasize, not pick on. First, I think it's an important insight that 2/3 of the workforce is not in the PEO world that you inhabited. We're all familiar with the all I see is all there is. And we all need to remember that there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of different things. I think that's a great insight. I love the work on the individual development plans. Some of the individual development plans in the past have not been all they should be. Guilty. We can't afford anymore to have that be a mail-in exercise. And really great that you have the tool to build that and give people the tools to do better with that, and then make it easy to get to the courses. I think that's great. And I love the model of making training compulsory, but at lower levels. So rather than having everybody do the digital transformation course you talked about, the Department of the Army picked specific groups of people that should do that. At DAU, we've had individual PEOs say, I want my whole team to learn more about Agile. We then give them a playlist of things their team should do. They make it compulsory at that level. Makes a lot more sense than trying to make something compulsory from the top down. That just creates stupid outcomes if spread across the whole workforce. The idea of at all levels, from the top when it's for everyone, truly, and then down all the way to a supervisor and an individual on an IDP. That's the way things should be assigned and done. I think that's a great example. So thanks for that. Ruben, newest member of the group, over to you.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Jim. So first of all, I think this is, I haven't visited Monterey in about 15 years. Last time I was here, I was actually doing recruiting services. I had Northern California as my squadron, and I had a recruiter across the street. But the theme today is very similar in terms of what I did in recruiting, which is all about talent and how do we recruit, okay, how do we develop, and then how do we retain, specifically on the acquisition workforce, okay? I noticed we got a couple of blue suiters, so it's good. I got a couple of contracting officers hiding in the back that I met earlier, so I might pick on you here as we go down the Q&A. I might turn it around and force it to you. Both Marianne Otis and Rob pretty much covered everything that a DACM does. I think we do it across the services pretty much about the same. The only thing that's a little bit unique, and I think it'll be very similar to what Marianne said on the Navy side of the house, is the support that we also provide, my office, myself provide, not only to the senior acquisition executive on the air side of the house, but also on the space side of the house. So I've got I'll say two masters that I got to make sure I keep happy on a daily basis in terms of, hey, what is it I'm doing in terms of monitoring the development of that workforce and making sure that they got the assets fully trained out there to execute the mission. Just like the other services, it's all about delivering capability. Usually in the Air Force, we're the ones that are called the PowerPoint Rangers. I decided that was not going to be the case today. I was going to keep it very simple. Usually we had real fancy with transitions, but it's all about capability delivery. And then it's really about that workforce that we got to develop. I'm big. I just took over this job. What I'm big on is the bumper sticker, but I just took over the job about 8 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. But it's really about building the bench. Okay, and that's what I guess when we have the Q&A, it's going to center on that as well a little bit in terms of how do we develop people, how do we hold folks accountable, you know, the supervisors that it's got to be from day one. It's actually got to be probably from before we bring the individual in as part of the team. We got to make sure that that supervisor out there, whatever level they are, they're being held accountable in terms of, hey, you've got to develop that bench. In the old days when I was in executing programs, bench was relatively deep. You didn't have to worry about that, okay? We were probably just bumping into each other on a daily basis. That bench is no longer deep, so we got to take responsibility for that. The workforce, from an acquisition perspective for us is about 44,000. So I think just slightly bigger than the Army side of the house and a little bit smaller, than the Navy, if I'm not mistaken. About 10% of that workforce is allocated, to Space Force. So both military guardians, not airmen, but guardians, and then civilians. On the civilian side of the house, it's Department of the Air Force acquisition civilians. Okay. So to me, they're interchangeable with regards to who they support, whether they're supporting the space equities or the air domain equities. But nonetheless, same capability, same development plan that we have to have for these individuals to succeed. The numbers, as you see them there, pretty much broken down, I think just similar to Rob. It's on the engineering, technical management side of the house, followed by contracting. And then at one point, I thought it was all PM because that's where I came from. So same view. I thought PM was the center of the universe. That's why I left it there in the center of the universe. But in reality, as we all know, there's no way to deliver capability, sustained capability, unless you got the entire workforce fully engaged in order to make that happen. But that's the way we're broken down. In terms of places, so the meccas of the United States, I'll call them, right? A good preponderance of our workforce is located at AFMC over in Wright-Patterson in Dayton, Ohio. But we've also got a good portion out in the Northeast at Anscombe Air Force Base, dealing with more of the electronic systems stuff out there, command and control. We've got folks down south in the armament side of the house at Eglin Air Force Base. So by the way, if any civilians here are looking to transfer over, I'll be more than happy to take you. If you're not happy, we'll take you over on the Air Force side of the house. I'm always recruiting. We've got representation also out in Albuquerque because we got PEO for Strategic Systems, changing their name now, but Nuclear Enterprises down there. And then also out in California with the space equities out at SSC. But for the most part, spread throughout the country. So some outliers, what I call out there. The Rapid Capability Office, for example, for space is over in Albuquerque, while the RCO for the Air Force is over at Bowling Air Force Base in DC. Workforce development initiatives. So just like Sammy would have briefed last year, I think it's all about focusing not only on the digital transformation, and I don't want to call it transformation anymore because I think we're there. Now it's more of the digital sustainment, not sustaining from a weapon system perspective, but to make sure that everyone is now getting involved into the digital enterprise. So a good portion of the money I get from the data side of the house, I do apply to digital type initiatives, learning, partnering with AFID, with Digital University and others to make sure that there's courseware and applications that are readily available to the workforce. Okay. We also make sure that we're partnering with DAU, so we're not duplicating a lot of the things that they might be doing on that side of the house, but complementary in nature. Okay. The one thing that I have found a little bit frustrating, just in full honesty, is I start going to these different websites, since I'm applying money to it, I want to make sure that someone like me can get to the training resource relatively quickly. And sometimes I'll say it's a little bit harder than I thought it would be. Okay. It'll take you about 15 steps before you can get to that link down on the right-hand side in page number 5 that says, oh, here are your training resources. So that's something that on the Air Force side of the house, we have to address. I got to make sure that the experience in terms of making sure that it's readily available and easy. Some of us don't have the patience anymore to be able to drill down 5 or 6 steps before we get to what we're looking for in terms of a training.
We'll talk about a chat bot later.
Okay.
I got a solution for you.
Okay, we might have to do that. Maintaining strong educational programs, just like my partners with the other services, tuition assistance, a key component on how we develop specifically the civilian workforce. On the military side of the house, we've got TA pretty much set, but on the civilian side of the house, I think that's one area that we continue to focus to make sure we entice individuals to, better educate themselves, develop themselves, and then stay in. And then one of the things I'll talk about next before I get off the stage is really the bottom one, education with industry. Don't know, Rob, if you have something similar to that. But ours has been around for about 75 years. We run a 9 to 10 month program every year. We have both civilian and military. Although a large number of the participants are tied to the acquisition workforce, we also open it up to the other career fields as well, so they can gain some benefits from that. typically targeted more at the captain, senior lieutenant captain, GS 11, 12/13, and some NCOs as well. But incredible opportunity for us to then get people out there. We partner with about 80 companies. As a matter of fact, next week I'll be meeting with Google and I think Amazon as well, and a couple of the participants that are currently in this year's cohort. When they come back, depending whether they're military or civilian, the military folks already have an outplacement option. Well, they'll have a follow-on assignment somewhere. On the civilian side of the house, we got to work that a little bit more. Typically, what I got to do now is send the individual out. She'll go or he will go on the EWE program for about 10 months. That's a vacancy that the unit has, and then we got to reabsorb them. But we think the return on investment is there. They should be bringing back things that they can apply that they've learned from the industry partners. And that's it. And I think I kept it under 9 minutes, which is what I wanted to do.
Really like Dave Burko's panel, excellent, staying on schedule, and that's not the way usually. And Mary Ann and Otis aren't even here where I can kick them under the table, so this is really well done. So we'd like to get into the Q&A section of this. Those of you who are online, please send questions in so we can include those. And before we ask the questions we thought were interesting, does anyone in the audience have any questions they'd like to ask me or the panel? Got the hands up everywhere. Good.
Hi, good morning. My name is Esma Erishen. I'm MPS Naval Research Program Manager. Before this position, I was a career contracting officer and served as director of contracting, supervisor contracting. So I was certified as level 3 contracting. Now I have to do PM certification. I'm having a little bit of challenges having some of the basic acquisition classes accepted by the PM curriculum. They're asking me to start from the beginning. You know, there are a couple of classes in the PM. So I'm just wondering who I can talk to about this, because I have been looking into this almost a year right now. And I'm sure there are other people in my position that they're going through the same thing as well. I understand the codes change, but there's an equivalency. And I also used to be director of training in the agency I came from. So I'm very familiar with the changes and everything. So is there any way we can maybe get into some waivers so that people like me can actually get to the next level certification sooner? Thank you.
Mary Ann, that sounds like Department of the Navy. Do you want to talk about what you can offer in that space? And I'll add to that.
Well, I mean, I think the first item would be if I don't know in terms of your history, in terms of what classes you've taken or haven't taken, but there are some equivalencies associated with, if you've taken a DAU class that may be equivalent to what the PM curriculum is offering. There's also fulfillments. So, you work at the Department of Navy, you would work with your competency lead or your DOE program director. I'm not sure. You said you're at MPS, but I'm not sure. I guess here what I would suggest in terms of the interest of time is that you just send me an email, and then I can follow up as needed to kind of help figure out what your situation is, and then we can go from there. How's that? Over.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And in general, when it's mechanical about what's equivalent to what, we've gone to a lot of effort to try to make that work. If there are problems, send that to us where you think it's wrong. And then one of the things your DACM office can help with is the fulfillment part and what you might be able to waive going forward. Thank you. Next.
Hey, good morning. Jason Thomas from I'm the Director of Digital Transformation for NOC AD out of Pax River. So good morning. Thank you for the time. My focus is digital transformation across acquisition, sustainment, our workforce development, talent management, all those areas together, tools, environments, everything. Few questions, sort of a shotgun, but that's the thread. Sharing lessons learned and initiatives across the services, so I can plagiarize or benchmark off maybe what the Army's doing or the Air Force or other services. So we can take that in-house and say, hey, we already have this solved. I love the example of the Army partnering up with, not CMU, but the university that you guys have teaching some of those courses. If I can get on that and some of our folks, is that an opportunity or things like that as one? The data training, Um, so we have LinkedIn Learning, we have CDAO pilots, we have Digital University for the Air Force, which I think is fantastic. I've used that a number of times. A lot of, how do we streamline some of that? So my workforce, I can say, hey, this is great. Here's your opportunities. Take these. Or as a developer and consumer customer, I don't have to go develop new training curriculum. We can take advantage of something that's already out there if we know what's available and it's not duplicative or whatever. And we have that sort of good, go here, right? Make it simple, go here, do this. And it's simplified. And last question I had, from a digital transformation standpoint and digital engineering sort of specify, product support and logistics training is fairly thin on the sites and sort of in the material out there. Where are we on that front to sort of bring that on standard with our peers in engineering, T&E and others? I don't want my product support professionals and logistics professionals to sort of be viewed as lesser than because they don't have enough training courses, curriculum, and they can't participate in those conversations. Thank you.
That's a lot. Okay, let's get thank you. I mean that, especially since the first one is really for the group, and that is how do we share best practices in talent development as one way to use digital transformation. Do you have any thoughts on that? Anybody in the group?
So real quick,
Amongst
if
the services.
Yeah, if I can address real quick, the product support piece, just real quick,
Yeah,
that's the second piece.
I'd like to jump in.
And the only reason I want to do that is because I just had a discussion yesterday with somebody from AFIT. And what they were, I don't want to say they were trying to sell me on, right? But I needed to sign off on a particular set of workshops and courses that they were developing, all tied to digital transformation. And they sold me on it by the end of the 35-minute conversation. I told them, I said, hey, I don't want to be throwing money if other services already have something out there. But I can appreciate what they were doing, which is taking it across the entirety of the acquisition lifecycle to include product support. Okay. And the way they're doing it, I think it's a 3-month-long cohort. It's not going to be in person. It'll be hybrid. So that way people, and then their approach is that if they can target individuals from certain program offices to begin with pre-milestone 8 type work in terms of how you apply digital tool set, coding for models, okay, and then hand it off 3 months later to the next set of folks, the next cohort that comes in. So it'll be a little bit tricky, right? Because you're going to have to probably tie in different program offices, let them go through the development and production phase. And then 3 months later, you got the third cohort that comes in at the 6-month point, and they're doing the product support and sustainment side of the house. So I can take your name and your details, and I can put you in touch with my counterpart over at AFIT that I spoke to yesterday.
And if I could chime in on the product support part, that actually is one of our most active career fields for creating credentials and informal learning and webinars. So there are a lot of opportunities for people in the product support area to participate. And I'm encouraged by that with the right kind of activity, we can create a lot of opportunities for people. And then on the second one about, there are a lot of opportunities now. There's Digital University, there's, we're connected to LinkedIn Learning and Coursera. There's all these different things going on. There isn't, in my view, a one answer to that. It's all of the things. There's still going to be the old school part. You know that this kind of learning asset from this sort of place has worked in the past, and you might guide someone to use that. All of us can curate. That's one of the jobs of DAU now, is to curate all that content that's out there so that the playlists that we're creating, either for individual organizations or in general, are a way of curating. There's a lot of stuff out here. Here's some things that we recommend. The career field guides that Marianne talked about, a lot of different ways to work in that space about helping. And then technology is going to help too. And soon that technology created the chaos that we have. It's also helping us all navigate it, much the way Google has helped us in the past. Some of the generative tools today are going to help people navigate what they need to do. I'm sorry for interrupting you about the chatbot before, but one thing that can do now is, I need to take my first contracting course. What is it? That sounds like a trivial thing, except it used to mean you had to know to click there and click down and click the other. With these intuitive interfaces, that's going to get easier. So all the things from a supervisor helping up to technology. Does anyone want to add to any of the 3 points? And we all need to collaborate all that we can on the first one, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think we have venues, am I on? Okay, for that collaboration. I mean, as a DACM Datum group, we meet bi-weekly or on the, so we have structured events. We meet routinely. We talk about these, we talk about the agenda before we go in. And I think across the services, we're pretty cognizant of what everyone's kind of doing in these areas. Getting it out to the, to the workforce and the other folks is maybe another question. Certainly we can do better with that, but I think we are sharing. I think, no, certainly I can say for myself, not all good ideas originate with me. So when Cuban has a great idea, I'm perfectly happy to plagiarize that and make that available to my workforce. The other question on the digital engineering, we're beginning to approach that deliberately within the Army. So we're actually leveraging the Human Capital Initiative's PPTE program that we curated, brought in some new companies onto that agreement that are embedded in that kind of workspace. And we're beginning to send folks through for 6 months, shorter rotations, 4 to 6 month rotations, to then bring that back to their organizations. Right now, that's focused probably mostly on ETM folks, but not limited, right? So we'll start flowing, it's critically important, I think, for the testers, and the logisticians to also have that and begin to use those models. So we've built a pretty deliberate training program to start to bring those talents and skills in-house and provide those opportunities for folks to go learn and then bring that back and implicate that into their practice. So I think it'll take a little time, but we will get there. And I think that we'll get to all the right facets or all the right folks within the workforce.
Really good question. Thank you. Next.
I'm going to ask one from online and then I'll come around through the room again. From Kaylee Keller, she asked, what are each of the organizations doing to recruit and retain college students or early career students into the acquisition workforce?
Who wants to take that one first? Well, I'll go first because I see Dinesh Verma and Mark Crisco in the back. There is a program building in the department now, the Defense Civilian Training Corps, modeled on ROTC, where for our part, we pay tuition and expenses and provide internships for young people who are interested in working in defense in the civilian capacity. And in exchange, they give time of service when they come into the organization. Really getting great feedback already as we do the piloting cohort. So there are lots of other programs too, but that's a flagship one right now for developing the workforce. I assume they're here because they're probably going to talk about that at some point today. But that's one that I can definitely highlight. Anybody else want to add to what we're doing to recruit and retain?
So I can jump in and add something as well, Mr. Woolsey. So I know from the agency perspective, a lot of agencies already have instituted like internship programs, where they're actually starting to recruit even down at that sophomore, junior year level with the college students, where they'll come in and work for the summer for a little bit of time. And then they will actually be, help assisting with getting a position once they've graduated from college. I know even in my career, I've gone out to universities and actively participated, definitely within like the HBCU community, being able to go out and speak to students and kind of tell a little bit from like the intel side of the house, what we do, why this could be an attractive career for you. So I know that a lot of the agencies are engaging in trying to attract those college students now versus waiting till they graduate, because once you wait till they graduate, you're already kind of late at that point. So that is really a big thing. That's a big push within the DoD spectrum. I know, Marianne, you were about to say something?
And so similar to that, we have the Navy Acquisition Development Program, which is a big area that we invest our limited data money for. And then you'll also, and that targets college graduates. And then you also will see at the major commands, they will have their own version of a college or entry level program targeting a particular, whether it's STEM contracts. So each of the commands will also supplement the NADP program. So it's definitely something that we're targeting as a enabler to refresh the acquisition workforce pipeline. Over.
Ruben?
Yeah, so very similar to what Marion and Otis stated. The one thing that I do want to highlight that I found out here not too long ago from the Air Force side of the house. So we've got something called Air Force Civilian Careers.com, which is not your standard usajobs.gov website, which appears to be paying off huge dividends in terms of attracting, and we're obviously targeting civilians, non-military. Military getting out, that's one thing. In terms of it's not only for acquisition, but it's really good towards getting the word out there and how we attract individuals. Very nice interface on the webpage. Even someone like me can use it. It's got a map feature, which are the hot jobs, and it'll give you information there about the incentive, whether relocation is going to be applied, et cetera, et cetera. So we're working towards that to make sure that the word is getting out there. Same thing with using data analytics and LinkedIn services to target the right individuals. Whoever clicks it once, all right, we know we got to go after that person and dig in a little bit better.
And Rob, you want to add anything to that?
Sure. And on the Army side, we leverage the Defense College Acquisition Intern, the DCAPE program heavily to bring in, specifically as it relates to interns. Every year I have requests for probably 3 times as many interns as were allocated from HCI, but the commands are very interested in bringing those folks in. The first year they're not real functional because it takes a while to get them a CAC and a clearance and all that kind of stuff to be able to be functional. So we try to get folks kind of between their sophomore, junior year, and then they're really functional for us. And I can't say we're just now starting to collect data on our conversion rates. So I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't think it's great right now, but I'm not sure that we're doing everything we can to facilitate that conversion either. So we're looking at that pretty closely. We're also doing some pilots with some of the newer recruitment tools, Yellow, Handshake, things like that, starting to actually leveraging data funds to do some pilots, and also kind of looking at some of those underserved areas, the women in STEM and things like that, to get out to the right folks and be able to advertise the opportunities. We actually find out in some of our military recruiting events that a lot of these college students don't understand they can work for DOD in a suit. They think they have to be in a uniform, and there's Army civilians. I didn't know that. Well, I'm interested. So a lot of marketing and getting the word out there, and I think it's a great career. On the Army, I like to say that our mission is the secret sauce. We do some really cool stuff. Right. We got great petting zoos. If we can get these kids to come in and spend the summer building things or blowing things up, and it's a great opportunity and a great way to attract people to do more, right? And things that they didn't know were out there. But yeah, a lot of opportunities, areas certainly we can do better. I'm sure my counterparts would agree. But leveraging all the tools that we have to get to the right folks and bring them into the fold.
DCAPE was the one I was going to mention. That's administered by the Human Capital Initiatives Group at DAU, as well as some other programs. I think the message here is there's a lot of them. Programs, there need to be more. We can't do enough recruiting upstream and getting people to come into the workforce. The fact that there's a lot of them is good because they'll each reach different kinds of audiences in different kinds of ways. I think that's a feature and not a bug. Great questions. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, panel. Alex Cherry, Supply Corps Officer studying contracting at NPS here. I have a question regarding acquisition professional membership. I understand there's 2 components to that, an education piece and the experience portion. Currently, I think it's 48 months of experience. And for most of us that have operational duties, we have interface with supply chain, sustainment, as well as contracting. However, that experience is not counted towards APM currently. I understand there probably is a waiver process in place, but my question is there a method or in the talks to have that operational experience be standard to help that membership process?
That is a DACM question. Would any of you like to weigh in on that?
Well, this
Marianne?
is Marianne. I guess the question is in terms of, there's two things. There's getting certified to the functional area that your position is identified to require. And there is your future career path or progression. I know particularly in the Supply Corps, it's been a challenge to transition and get more participation in the acquisition workforce career path. So I would say, I would ask, are you, and then the other thing in terms of contracts, when you're talking about professional certification, it's 1 year of experience. So I'm trying to figure out, are you talking about getting certified in contracts, or are you trying to get the APM sort of, which is more of related to promotional progression in the military community? So again, maybe that's more of a specific question related to yourself. And that would be something that you could send me an email, or Renee King is in the audience and you can chat with her. But I look at it as really two different things. There's the promotional precepts, and then there's getting certified in the functional area DWEA requirements. Over.
And Renee raised her hand this time, even when it meant work for her. Before it was an easy. So
she's a good person.
I think we can make the connection there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more.
Hey, good morning. Robert Borka. I'm actually over at Homeland Security, used to be in DoD. And if you guys don't like the adaptive acquisition framework, don't come looking at me, because that's what I help with. And maybe more given time, but just a follow-up maybe afterwards. But DoD gets lots and lots of money, and you guys are putting lots and lots of effort into all these initiatives, getting people on board, training, certifications, and so forth. And one of the things we're contemplating on how we do this in DHS, and we have the Coast Guard as partners there as well. What's the value proposition for all the efforts we're putting into this, right? So how are you measuring metrics or some way of measuring, if I'm the Hill, I'm going to give you 150 million of DWEA money. What's my value I'm getting on the back end? What's that output to it? Not just I have people on board, but like, is it actually at the end of the day, if I'm doing back to basics or I'm doing experiential learning, am I getting better acquisition? Am I getting it on time, faster, within budget? So that's kind of a thing maybe to think about, and maybe even for our NPS folks, as you guys are thinking about future case studies, how do you get after the value proposition of all the effort we are doing in our workforce? Because I will say DHS, we are struggling with that. We don't have the resources. So every dollar is even harder for us to argue for. And so we're trying to get after that question as well.
For the last question of a session, that was a fastball with some hair on it. I'll give the rest of my panel a pass by only saying you've hit on one of the hardest questions, not just in DoD, but as part of my job, I work with colleagues from the private sector, some of the biggest and most famous corporations you've heard of. And to say it's hard doesn't mean there's not work being done and there's not progress being done, but it's definitely more than a 1-minute answer at the end of a panel. But it is important. We all know on the one hand that the workforce is the most important part of any enterprise. Nothing happens without them. How they perform is, in the end of the day, the most important thing there is. The measurement tools vary on the situation and what we're doing, and it's hard in every case. There's no question about that. All right, well, we have reached the end of our time, and lunch is what is next, and I never want to delay anybody's lunch. So I want to thank the panel for being here. I also want the fee for having me come here and do this is I get to make a public service announcement. In this case, this will be my last panel in this capacity. I'll be retiring from DAU at the end of July. The reason I mention that, I appreciate the applause, but the reason I mentioned it was that there isn't a person chosen for that. It is an open opportunity. I can say with some authority, it is a fantastic opportunity, which I've had the privilege and honor to have. Now time to pass the scepter to someone else. Tell your friends there's a great job available. And it's also been a pleasure and honor to lead this panel. Thank you all. Thank you, NPS, and happy lunch.
Thank you.